All right, this is our commentary for Friday the 13th. The original, this is the second commentary on this channel, but the first one that
Yeah.
Robert and I have done together, and probably not the last of them. Anyway, are you ready, good sir?
I'm ready.
All right, let me get the timer pulled up here. Where is timer? And in three, two, one, play. I've watched this
Paramount
transfer
Picture.
maybe once. I've heard it's a it's a small upgrade from the Blu-ray, just because
Right.
you're hitting diminishing returns.
Well, and this was a very cheap production to begin with. Like
Yeah,
the 4K you have, like that's the best we're ever gonna get, right? Like that's the peak of quality, picture
unless
quality
they invent
for this
some
film.
new version of HDR that just drastically.
Mm.
The
Yeah,
the
but
only two things that I can see is either something that replaces HDR or AI upscaling finally gets to the point where it is in games. I don't know if you know this, but gaming has been doing AI upscaling, but like it works really well.
mhm.
Where we just get to that point where AI can keep upscaling and look better and better.
Well, the difference is with video games, everything you're looking at is artificially created in a computer in the first place.
Yeah,
With live action film, we still haven't cracked that, and we should stop fucking with it until we do. And even then, it's questionable. But that's another conversation. But yeah, I am worried that they're at some point going to do, well, here's the AI upscale. And that looks better than ever, and it'll look fake and glossy and weird. And you don't want that. With these old movies, you want the grit. You want the film, you want the texture. Don't get rid of that.
hang on a second, Robert.
No worries. Here we have immediately, because infamously, this movie was, admittedly, by the creator Sean Cunningham, a ripoff, a cash-in ripoff of Halloween. So right off the bat, we get the POV killer shots with the camera, which Halloween didn't invent, by the way. Like that's not the first movie to do it,
No.
but this is clearly they admitted that's the movie. The success of that movie is what they're ripping off.
But what I wanted to say with the AI thing is what I think will happen is that will be how we upscale newer films with all the CGI and everything.
Mhm.
The AI will be able to go in and upscale it, and it will be to the point of video games where you can't tell that it's upscaled.
Right.
Because a popular thing with PC gaming, especially right now, is to run the game in an eternal resolution of like 720p, and then an AI just goes in and upscales it so you can run it on much lower hardware. It's really cool. And you're like, I don't know what you're saying. Shut up.
So when two questions: when do you first see this movie, and is this the first Friday the 13th movie you see?
No. So that was what's funny because I knew the twist. We all know the twist. This is maybe the fourth or fifth one that I see. Probably later because I go backwards. I'm pretty sure I see all of the later sequels where he's a zombie first. Because I remember when I saw the
Interesting.
remake, I was like, "This is dumb. He's running and like a hunter, and that's not Jason." So I don't know when I first see this, but I do remember having that like, "Oh, this is kind of boring."
Hmm. It's if you've seen a lot of slasher movies, there are many movies before and since that do what this movie's doing, just better. I'll be the
Is this
first to
the
admit
only
that.
slasher franchise where the first one isn't the best one?
That's a good question. With some, it's certainly
And that's not
debatable. I
like a
mean,
hot take. That is just the common like the first one is
right.
not the best one.
I mean, in your case, you prefer Nightmare 3 over 1, which is fair, but there's more of like a 50-50 split on
Yeah,
that,
that's a
right?
50-50.
No one's favorite Friday movie is this one, I don't think.
Favorite
That
Freddy movie?
probably it. I said Friday.
Oh, it sounded like you said
It
Freddy. I was
sounded like
like,
Friday. I said Friday.
well, I'd hope not. Freddy's not even in this one.
Yeah. So my first, I was thinking about this earlier. The first like cultural zeitgeist reference I ever get to this movie, or even the Jason character, was improv sketch on the show Whose Line Is It Anyway? where somebody references a guy in a hockey mask with a machete, and I'm like a little child, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, but people are laughing, so that must be a reference to a thing I don't know. Years pass, and I remember when the remake is coming out and seeing trailers for it, and I'm like, oh, what is this? I remember the trailer, like hearing Pamela's voice, like his name was Jason, and today is his birthday, and I'm like consuming all like that trailer for the first. I remember my mom, like a lot of those movies, saying like, "Oh yeah, they're remaking that." Yeah, I remember that movie. I saw it. I was like, "Oh, it's a remake. Okay." Like I missed the whole Freddy versus Jason thing and all like the hype for that remake, which you were there for because you got introduced to this franchise at a much
Probably a
earlier
little
age than I
younger than I should have.
did.
No, because I remember I was in fifth grade and I couldn't understand why nobody else was excited for Freddy versus Jason. I was like,
That was the
do you,
Avengers for you.
yeah, it was like, do you understand that Freddy and Jason are going to be in the same movie? Like, my poor grandma had to take me to see it because I couldn't go by myself.
And God bless her.
So something I will give this movie credit for is I really love its use of music, where it's really only when the killer you're from the killer's POV.
Yes,
Even if the music gets a little grating at times because it's just that one note.
it's a lot of strings. It's
Yeah,
very hard. Clearly inspired by the Psycho score, obviously, not to the egregious degree that Reanimator
Reanimator.
is, but I still think the score stands on its own. I still think it's great. The music is at least half the success of this movie, in my opinion. It does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, and I'd argue a theme that is just as iconic as the Halloween one.
Yeah, sure. Especially, particularly the Kiki Mama
That's what
Mama,
I'm thinking
like
of.
that. Yeah.
Although everybody gets it wrong,
Well, I said it right, but
you
everybody else
did.
gets it wrong.
Well, because that's the common thing is everybody just thinks it's like ch ch ch. So what? That doesn't even make
Yeah.
any sense. Why would it be that?
So this film, of course, is set on Friday the 13th of June, presumably of 1980, the movie in which it's released, but not according to part 4, because as I have
Oh
in
God,
this
we're in this
headstone,
again.
Pamela Voorhees, 1930 to 79. But there
Um,
wasn't a Friday the 13th in June of 1979. What are we doing? For the first and only time, this movie broke canon. In a series known for its airtight continuity, this is the biggest flop.
yeah, it's like the Spider-Man Homecoming of the Friday the 13th movies.
It's exactly like that.
Um,
So this first one was shot in
well,
New
and there's
Jersey,
weird
right?
time. The first few are shot more on location. You know, you're in like New Jersey, you're in that area. But then,
3, I think, was California.
is it three where that starts? It's three or four, and you can tell
I think, I think
immediately.
it's 3, because that is not Midwest
Yeah.
woods.
Um,
Sorry, what were you saying?
the timeline is also a little wonky even in this one because I think she's gonna have a reference to it happened what 40 years ago. 40 years ago at this point.
Uh, that's a good question. No, I think it's closer to 30.
30. Okay. So like that would make sense why Jason is an adult in part two. Then why is he a kid in this one?
The answer is because A, it's a dream sequence, and B, they didn't know yet he was coming back. I love part 2, but arguably the biggest problem with that movie is they really don't take the time to explain what's been going on with Jason.
I didn't care.
They're just like,
This is
hey,
the best character in the movie.
Crazy Ralph, the old, not mentor, but the wise man who's like, hey, don't go there. I'm gonna
It's
die.
got a death curse. That's what's
Yeah,
missing in the reboot is just a crazy Steve guy. Because they try again in part three, and it's that weird homeless guy with the eye.
who never comes back. And Crazy Ralph, to their credit, this actor, he comes back for part 2, and then the actor they get back for part 7, where he does the opening narration. like the
Oh,
recap. That's his voice.
okay.
So that's fun. And this driver here is the voice of Belle's father in Beauty and the Beast.
That's
So good for him.
crazy. Um, but yeah, we talked about how this is a ripoff of like Halloween and Psycho, but I think it's kind of a brilliant twist to invert the Psycho formula, where it's the
Hmm.
mom has gone crazy,
That's the best idea of this movie. And to her
and
credit,
it's
Betsy
just
Palmer's great.
it is kind of a shame that like this is the Jason franchise now because I don't think we'll ever do a straight up reboot with just Pamela again because some studio will be like, you gotta have the hockey mask, you gotta have Jason, but
Yeah, unless
you
that's
could
what that
remake
show turns
this
out to be.
that show that's up in the air, but you could do
Mhm.
something really cool with just the premise of this film, but not
I do.
executed by hacks.
Right. No, I think you could make it. The problem is, I have two pitches for how you bring Friday the 13th back and reboot this thing. The problem is they're completely different. First pitch is going back and doing this movie again and making it a lot darker, a lot creepier. I would take it very seriously. I would set up the Pamela twist better. There's a lot of things you could fix and flesh out, but then I would end the film, if it was a remake of this, with Pamela dying and then Jason coming out of nowhere and killing Alice. So I would essentially take the opening of part two and putting that at the end of the first one. And then, oh my god, Jason's alive, and the scary shocker ending, which this movie kind of goes for. And then you have Jason in the sequels. My other pitch is just make a schlocky, fun Jason movie in the woods. Where what's it a sequel to? What's canon? Who cares? It's just another Jason movie. Don't overcomplicate it or think about it. These are These are two completely different movies in my head, but I'd be fine with
I
either.
meet you in the middle. What I think they should do is your first pitch should be that show because I think we've shown that we can take these premises and expand on them in shows. You know,
Hmm.
the that Psycho show, Bates Motel, for example.
Yeah,
And then in the movies, just give us the schlocky, low budget Jason killing people in the woods.
look at how successful those Terrifier movies are now. You don't
Yeah,
need to
that's what people
overcomplicate
want.
it. Hmm.
That's why it always cracks me up when people are like, "Oh, it's just killing." Yeah, have you looked at what was popular in the '80s? It was a guy in a hockey mask going around killing people. They made 10 of
Yep.
them.
Yeah, and obviously Halloween was not the first slasher movie. You know, we got a few kind of big
Halloween
quintessential
is
ones
the
in the
first
70s.
masked slasher.
Debatably, but certainly the biggest success of them
Yeah.
of the
Or I guess
70s.
I should say
Uh,
it is the creation of the movie monster slasher.
I'd still argue you should give that to Leatherface.
Oh yeah, you know what? Leatherface though is weird because it's like a family.
Right, it's still different. Halloween is what we think of. It's like all those tropes and different ideas distilled into one movie that we're then copying movie for.
Yeah, which is
Um,
funny because this is what I find interesting about the slasher genre. Is this is ripping off Halloween and then it kind of finds its identity with part two, and then everything else after is just ripping this off.
yeah, that's true. I mean, we recently talked about the original My Bloody Valentine, which I think is very good, but that's another twist killer reveal. Like the Who Done It slasher, you could argue this invents, even though it doesn't do it very well.
Yeah, because I don't think Black Christmas ever reveals who the killer is.
Nope.
Well, and it's also funny to think because we went from like Black Christmas and then Halloween, the two holidays you would think of, and then with all the holidays available, Sean S. Cunningham went Friday the 13th. That'll scare
And
people.
I, you joke, but a lot of people are superstitious. A lot of weird. Just
And
the idea of
here is the part of the movie where you remember that this is a low budget studio movie in the 70s and 80s. You cannot get away with this now.
nope. But hi, Kevin Bacon.
And Kevin Bacon.
But but to Cunningham's credit though, like I said, Friday the 13th, that probably used to be more of a thing than it is now, because now when you hear that, you think of this franchise. But the idea of Friday the 13th being, a cursed day, an unlucky day, that was just a thing that some people believed or knew. Just a superstitious thing. And he, to his credit, came up with that title and said, man, that would make a good horror movie title, and I want to rip off
Do
Halloween,
you
so
wish
I'll
it
put
kind
it
of
in.
tied more into the movie? Like Halloween is because it's on Halloween. My Bloody Valentine is all about Valentine's Day. It
It
just
does
kind
a
of feels
little bit.
arbitrary.
Yeah, it does a little bit because earlier we set up like, oh, this camp, like it's cursed, like all these weird things keep happening. Presumably on previous Friday the 13th, like the opening prologue with the flashback with the kids getting killed. Like that, I think was on a Friday the 13th. So it's in there a little bit, but then we kind of abandoned that
Yeah,
for this
very
movie. It's
quickly.
which is funny too, since for the sequel they were like, well, it's called Friday the 13th. Like, do we want to do an anthology thing where each film is just a completely separate story, just on a Friday the 13th? And that's obviously not where we went once Jason entered the picture. But then that's kind of what that evolved into with the TV show, which is an anthology, I think an anthology series called Friday the 13th that has nothing to do with the movies.
It is not an
Um,
anthology. That is more about cursed artifacts. It's almost like an Indiana
okay,
Jones thing, to my understanding.
weird.
However, it does have one of the leads went on to be Steven in part 9.
That is true.
Okay, so that
Uh,
prologue takes place in 58, and he
okay.
drowned in 57, so it's the year before. And then Wikipedia just says in present day, so let's assume 79 or 80. Because you got to think when they're doing present day, it was probably as they were filming, so that would be 79.
Right. Yeah, that's probably what they were thinking when they got to part four. It's just funny when it's like, yeah, but there was a Friday, June 13th in 1980. Just say that's when it was set.
No, you can't do that. They did miss the opportunity to release this on Friday the 13th. Apparently, this came out on May 9th of all times.
Weird. Well, it worked out because it was still probably in theaters by June, given how successful this was.
Oh, undoubtedly. And it should be noted that this was made for $500,000 and has grossed almost 60 million.
Yeah, those were big numbers. We were talking about this earlier. Halloween comes out. That's at the time like the most successful slasher movie ever. That starts a trend, but it takes a minute to get there. We get a few here and there in 1979 and 1980, including this one. But once this one hits, that's when the floodgates open. Because 81, the following year, is when you have like 2,000 slasher movies come out, including Halloween 2 and Friday the 13th 2.
Yeah.
So this, of course, Halloween had ripoffs, but this was what like cemented the trend, right? Where the success of this was like, oh my god, we all have to make a fucking slasher movie for
Yeah.
$2.
Well, that's what I always like. I can't get upset that movies are a business run industry. My second favorite franchise of all time is a shameless ripoff that only exists to make the studio money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we should mention part two is directed by Steve Miner, who went on to direct another movie on our list, the 2008 Day of the Dead.
Oh god, didn't know that.
It's one of the last movies he directed.
Well, he did back to back duty on Friday the 13th. He did 2 and 3, one of the best and
One
one
of
of the
the
worst.
best. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he was just burned out.
Probably. I mean, they made these fucking movies in less than a year.
Yeah,
And do you like it when your comic relief character almost shoots the girl with a fucking
this is the
arrow?
scene that I was talking about. I was like, yep, this is where you realize, oh, this was an independent film in the late
Because
'70s.
unless I'm mistaken, that didn't look like a special effect. That just looked like something they did for real.
I mean,
It
considering
really
what's going to
is.
happen to the
Right.
snake later on, it's probably a real
Yeah.
arrow.
Oh, and I'm gonna rant about that. That's annoying. But also, here's the thing: we joke a lot about Cunningham not being a particularly good director. That doesn't mean the movie is without its atmosphere or its qualities that do make it stand out.
This movie has a. I was talking to Austin about this. All of these movies have this '80s charm to them.
Hmm.
It's it's gritty and dirty.
It's kind of a
And
blue
we'll talk.
collar vibe.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get to the remake. But one thing I don't like about the remake, even though I do like that movie a lot, is it's so sleek and like very 2009. I don't know. You're missing something when you have that like sleek look.
And most of those remakes, especially the Blumhouse ones, even though I like some of them, they do have kind of a samey quality to them in terms of the look and the music. And you go back to this film, and there is that charm and those little touches that kind of stand out. Like the title card is a perfect example. That is instantly iconic with the music ramping up, the logo coming at the screen, the glass smashing. It's little choices like that that make it stand out. And then you fast forward to the remake, and it's like, Friday the 13th. Eh,
Yeah,
it's just, okay.
well, that was a title card.
Yeah.
Well, I
There's
think,
a title
and like
card.
I think of I think the third one that has that weird synth music that will get stuck in my head,
They tried something different.
and then the fucking logo explodes. We don't do that
Uh,
anymore.
the second one explodes. The third one is the title coming out of Mrs. Vergon's
Oh,
head.
okay, yeah, you're right.
Also, to this movie's credit, even though
That
I
was
think
a
it
hell
doesn't
of a
do,
stunt for a movie of this stature.
I'm glad you mentioned the stunt because this actress, like Robbie something, she's really cool. She seems really fun and is proud of this role, and of course, did that stunt for real because they couldn't really afford stunt doubles, and she was like, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll jump out of that fucking car." And props. I respect her commitment. I'm
It's
glad she wasn't
crazy.
injured.
Yeah, but and that's just stuff that you can get away with when you don't
But
have a
alone.
studio breathing down your neck.
Yep. And even though what I was alluding to earlier is, even though I have mixed feelings on this, on how this handles the whodunit premise, what does set this apart from Halloween is you have that iconic Halloween opening from the POV of Michael Myers. But that's just the opening. This does it for the whole movie with our killer. That's kind of cool.
No, I really love the POV stuff, and I think that is where Cunningham is putting in an effort at least.
Mhm.
The problem is that it also there is no clues to who the killer is in this movie.
Right, there's like half a one.
I
They
don't
got a
think
bullet
Pamela
drowned in.
Voorhees even comes up until you see her.
Yeah. But here we have the first censored kill. This isn't the theatrical cut, it's just cut down by a few seconds. And it still holds up.
That
It's
it
impressive work from
does.
Savini.
My favorite thing about that, not as a criticism, just as a joke, is that her neck changed colors between shots.
Yes. Which we'll see again with Kevin Bacon.
And now for the rest of the movie, where people just do things for a while.
Yeah. It's just people hanging out.
It'd be cool to see
It's
Kevin
just a hangout
Bacon
movie.
come back in one of these.
He's done some horror stuff. Give him a different
He
role. Let
was
him play
in
the
They
sheriff or something.
Them. He's not above
Yeah,
this material.
that is true. But of course, a lot of the tropes of this franchise are established here with the partying teens and bathing suits. Later, we'll do skinny dipping. We're not at the skinny dipping yet. Um, but I like the summer vibe. That's another thing that sets it apart from Halloween and previous slashers. Like this
Okay,
does set up this franchise as the summer slasher franchise.
Robert, I want you to name every character on that dock.
We've got Sandra and Mark and Alice. No, those are part four. Um, we've got Alice and Kevin Bacon and Brenda because the subtitles said Brenda.
Which one is
Mercy.
Brenda?
I don't know. I'm just reading the subtitles.
No, that's something I was thinking of. I think about every time I watch this movie. I know one character, two characters' names: Alice and Pamela.
Yep, and Ralph. Wreck It
Oh,
Ralph. He's in
Ralph,
here.
Crazy Ralph, Crazy Wreck It Ralph.
Go to Wreck It. Now I wish that guy lived long enough to be able to voice Ralph in that movie.
Oh,
Also, another compliment I'll give this movie. Of course, these aren't exactly big names. Kevin Bacon had been in a couple things like Animal House or something. He had appeared in stuff, but these are all like New York theater kids that they hired for this movie. And to their credit, like none of them are terrible. The performances are mostly fun. The characters are nothing. Like it's as flat as you can get in terms of characters,
They,
but the performances are good.
yeah, they all get one. Friday has Kevin Bacon, Halloween has Jamie Lee Curtis, and Nightmare has Johnny
Yep,
Depp.
that's true. Great point.
And then Hellraiser gets Henry Cavill years later in a very bad movie, but it's okay. No, I don't know if you've ever seen a still of him in that image in that movie. It's so weird. He's so
Oh
young.
yeah. Well, the what I'm introduced to him in is the Count of Monte Cristo, the early 2000s version, and
Oh, I haven't
he's
seen
like
that.
a young skinny kid. It's a good movie. It's worth watching.
I
Well,
got introduced to him where most people did Superman.
right.
Because I remember trying to watch Hellraiser 8, and it was so funny because it was on like the sci fi channel. And my mom made me shut it off because my cousin was in the other room and he was like 8. And I was so mad. And now thinking back, like, yeah, she saved me from watching Hellraiser 8.
She really did you a favor.
Yeah.
So
Here comes your
here,
favorite scene.
I hate this scene. We're at the snake scene where because we got to pad out this movie, we're gonna chase around a snake in a cabin for 2 minutes. Because what else are we gonna do?
It is
But this,
astounding to me that they couldn't think of a single like teenage bit of teenage drama in the middle of a summer camp. Instead, it's
yeah,
we're
those
gonna
come
kill a snake
later.
and then we're gonna go play strip monopoly.
Yes. So the story behind this goes: Tom Savini asks somebody who had some pet snakes, but like trained, not just pet snakes, like trained for screen snakes. Borrowed one for this movie, and then just fucking killed it on camera. And the guy who owned the snake didn't know they were going to do that, and was very pissed off, rightfully so. And I think that sucks. I don't for this things like I don't think they had to kill a snake for real. That's I don't know who like
Okay,
obviously negligence was. I don't know who's at fault fully. If it's Savini or Cunningham, like there's maybe some miscommunication somewhere. But cut this part out of the movie. I don't like it. It pisses me off.
okay. So I'm gonna play the devil's advocate. I don't like that they did it without permission because obviously that was somebody's pet. I
Mhm.
like that they actually killed the snake. It gives it a little bit of grit. Like you can't see that in other movies, but but I agree with you that it was shitty of them to do that behind somebody's back.
Yeah, and it's I'm pretty sure because we see the actor there playing Bill. I think he's running around with the
Well,
machete.
I think
But I think when you get that close up of the snake getting killed, I'm pretty sure that is
that you
Savini's
couldn't do
hand.
nowadays.
No, Tonto over here. So I do think Savini was the one who killed the snake. Again, there's miscommunication or something, but that's annoying. And again, it's so easy to cut around. Like just all you need is a shot of the guy just doing this, like hitting something. We don't need to see it. I get where you're coming from about adding that grit, but it's just the background on it that pisses me off. And I don't even like snakes. I hate snakes, but it's
Yeah, if
still
it had been a
frustrating.
snake where they got permission, maybe he was dying or something. That's
Yeah,
different.
maybe. Sure. And again, I just want to reiterate to this movie's credit, as nothing as this dialogue is, these people are believable. There is a
I've
more genuine
never,
dynamic here compared to some of the sequels.
and in most of these movies, I always at least feel like I'm watching people, a bunch of friends, even if it's like, yeah, you ain't got much going on behind the eyes.
Yeah, it's fine. They're young. Also, the reputation of these is them being teenagers, and yeah, that's often left into the teenager genre, whatever that means. Really? I think they're usually meant to be young adults, more college age. That's at least the vibe I've always gotten watching these. It's not like Halloween where they're supposed to be in high school,
Yeah, I mean
you
they're
know?
always ambiguous, but they'd have to be at
Mhm.
least old enough to run a camp.
Right. But it's fine because Pamela's gonna show up and help him out at some point.
Of course.
And do you like this obligatory scene of this cop driving his motorcycle, turning around, going the other way? Okay. Yep, there he
Yeah,
goes.
yeah. I'm glad we stayed on that for like 5 minutes.
We never claimed that this movie was paced well.
No, in fact, I'd argue the opposite. Nothing happens for like 70 minutes. And now for the cleaning section of this movie.
Then, oh my god, crazy rough jump scare. I'm a messenger of God.
I had a Friday the 13th novel called Church of the Divine Psychopath, which I would love to
Oh.
see somebody adapt. But basically, this church decides that Jason is the hand of God, and that the people that he kills are the people that God has chosen no longer need to live. So they
That's
resurrect
amazing.
him, and he just starts killing all of them.
That's great.
But I remember there's this really kind of tastefully handled for this material subplot about this character realizing she's gay, and
Oh,
like trying to come to terms with that, and then Jason kills her. It started out
that's interesting.
nice. At
Yeah,
least you
well,
figured out who she was before she died.
yeah. Whenever we get to our part 7 commentary, I'm sure that'll come up because that I don't. That's the one where like a lot of the actors on that movie just happen to be gay.
Oh,
Like that's a whole thing. Um,
honestly, I can never tell unless it's the stereotypical, like, you know,
yeah,
over the top.
right.
Like it took. I had to read that the Blue Ranger from Mighty Morphin was gay before I'd know. If I'm just watching that show, I'd have no idea.
And and then how do you feel about Alice, this movie's
I
final girl?
think she is perfectly okay. She is not terrible. She is not great. She exists like most of the
I
people in this movie.
I like Adrienne King in the role. I like that she has a bit more of a tomboy vibe than usually see in these movies. It's funny because Scream, of course, popularized like this is what a final girl is and all the tropes and rules and stuff. And Alice is a character who doesn't check all those boxes. We don't. Laurie is much more of that in Halloween, and of course Nancy in Nightmare on Elm
Which is
Street.
funny because I don't know if this is a hot take or maybe I'm just missing something when I watch it. I don't feel like Laurie is much more developed than Alice is. It's just
No,
Jamie Lee Curtis is a better actress.
sure.
If you're just looking at them on the page, Alice and Laurie are on about the same level for me.
Yeah, they're both likable, innocent, good intentioned.
The only thing that I think we might make Alice a little more interesting is just in terms of the final girl trope, because this makes it clear that she at some point was in a relationship with the guy that's running this whole thing. That's
Mhm.
interesting, just from a oh, you're not as innocent as some of the other
Right.
final
We see her
girls.
smoke weed later.
Yeah,
Like, she's not the good girl of the group. She's just one of them. Like, there's
she
not
just
that.
happened to be the one that survives.
Right. Until the next movie.
Yeah, that's because Jason is a better killer than Pamela.
And even then, most of the final girls in this franchise still aren't, like, fully fall into that box that Laurie or Nancy fall into. Like, Jenny in 2 has a boyfriend, the girl in 3 has a boyfriend, and then a lot of the later ones end with, like, a final couple that presumably get together. So this franchise never is as stereotypical. Like on the surface, people are like, "Oh, you have sex, you die." It's like that's part of it, but it's not like I don't know. I don't think these movies are
Because you
as
never see the final
anti-sex as
girls
people
have
think.
sex. They're always the ones that don't participate in like the kissing
Sure,
or drugs, except for this one.
but arguably also
Because even
too
Nancy
there.
has a boyfriend. Two of them, if you go by that movie.
That's true,
Because Freddy's her boyfriend
but
now.
but they also make it very clear that her and Glenn have never like gone that far. You know,
Yeah,
that's a much
that
more
that's what I'm
innocent.
saying is I think
Very
it's more of
much.
these movies never specify if the final girl gets that far. You just never see
Mhm.
them have sex. The people that you
Right.
do see die, typically you have seen have sex.
Sure. And then, but then there are plenty of characters who die who don't. You know.
Looking at oh god, what is that duo in the remake? The black guy and the Chinese guy. They didn't
uh,
deserve that. They were
no.
fine.
Yeah. Is his name Chewy?
Yeah, I
Is that
think
his
so.
nickname? Something like that.
They're great. I
Yeah,
love them. They're so good.
they're good.
That is one
Or
thing
of
you
course.
cannot accuse that remake of. Is I remember almost all of those characters. Maybe not their names, but at least something that happens to them. Even Travis, the dick.
He is memorably awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a thing I'm conflicted on with this movie. Is on the one hand, I really like the laid back, summer camp vibe of this. I like that it's not super tropey yet, but you could give me a little more. Like we have a scene of this girl, acting her heart out, talking about these nightmares she has, and you're like, eh,
I don't
like
even know what your name
we're
is.
just we're just padding for time.
Yeah, because so I've always said that I don't love the first Halloween. I respect it. It's an enjoyable film. I don't think it's a masterpiece. I think both this and Halloween are kind of boring up until that third act. The only
I well,
difference is this is more boring. And honestly, sometimes I just want to watch the last like 20 minutes on YouTube because it's the only thing of note that happens.
I love the first Halloween. I much prefer it to this. You have Donald Pleasance the whole movie. He adds a lot of personality, and you have
But you
Dean
didn't have him
Cunning's
the whole
cinematography.
movie. He fucks off for
Well,
large portions of that movie.
just a little bit. There is more going on. It's about the suspense. It's about the buildup. You got to have the
But I
scenes of
don't
Michael
feel any
stalking them.
suspense. I don't know why. Maybe I'm broken. I don't know.
Who
No,
knows?
Halloween.
Like hot take. Hot take. Halloween is a better movie than Friday the 13th. I will die on this.
I would probably put it above the first one, yeah, because it does have better. It has at least one more character that I like.
But I've also always said, to your point earlier, as good as Jamie Lee Curtis is in that movie, and I think Laurie works totally fine for that movie. I also think she's kind of a blank slate. You can do whatever you want with in the sequel. That's part of what makes
Is
those
that the most
that
is
franchise
Lori the
interesting.
most convoluted final girl? There's like six of them now.
Yes, but I also think that's what's make it interesting. Even if most of those movies suck, it is kind of cool that we go in all these different directions with her. Yeah, at least a
But
variety, which
do
is
you ever think about
interesting.
this? There's like six versions of Laurie Strode, and four
Yeah,
of them are played by Jamie Lee Curtis.
there was a multiverse of Laurie Strodes.
Because you've got the first two, then you've got the Resurrection or H2O timeline, then you've got the Blumhouse trilogy, and then you've got the Rob Zombie versions, which are the only ones not played by Jamie Lee Curtis. That's what they should do for the next Halloween. Is he just has to fight all of the Laurie Strodes?
Yes. And then all the Michaels show up at the end.
Yeah,
But
including
one thing,
the pink masked and blonde haired one.
the one that's on screen for 2 seconds.
Yeah,
One thing I should mention though to an earlier point before somebody corrects me, the whole are these slashers, are they anti-sex or not? Because somebody could say, well, but the whole reason this Pamela is going on this killing spree is the couple starts with the couple at the opening because they were having sex, ignoring Jason, which is true. But that I think is just it's the negligence of it. It's I don't see the movie as being anti-sex. It's anti-negligence. Like these people
even
weren't paying attention and fooling around, and that's what
even if you ever
led to
read that
Jason
the
drowning.
villains are anti-sex, at the end of the day, they still end up losing.
Right. If a character in this movie in this is anti-sex, it's Pamela, who is an older, you can presume, more conservative background character, and
She gets
clearly
her
the
head
villain.
fucking cut off.
Yeah, I don't think the movie is on Pamela's side. in terms of what she's doing. Like, I get it, you're
It's also
grieving, but
weird
there are
for
more
me
healthy
to
ways to
read.
process that.
It's also weird for me when people try to read into these movies. You're thinking about it more than the people behind the movie did.
I mean, critics sure took them seriously because boy, did they
Oh
hate
God,
these as they were
these
coming out.
movies are a big reason why I have no respect for Ebert or Roper or Siskel, whatever his name was at the time.
Siskel and Ebert, and I do like them. They were good critics. I think they had a lot of bad takes, especially when it comes to horror, and I think they were very flawed, as you know, everybody is. But the horror is the genre where
They lost all their
probably,
brain
arguably,
cells.
yeah, arguably more than any other genre. It's like just
Did we
don't pay
see
attention
him
to critics.
die?
Just watch it for yourself.
I don't
No, that
remember.
was off screen.
Robert, he
That's one
was
of the
killed
later
by the
kills.
editing.
Yeah, we got a couple more of those coming up. See, Alice is smoking pot, just hanging out with everybody else. Uh, I
Playing Strip
suggested,
Monopoly.
yeah, which I suggested we do on camera, but John said no. So sorry, folks.
We'd get our channel deleted.
And this is the only nudity you get in this movie, even though that's what this franchise is known for. Like, it is very brief.
Which is funny because when you actually go out there and watch them, the only one with like I would say excessive nudity is five in the remake.
Five, yeah, five the remake, and arguably four. 4 is a lot,
Four just has a lot
but
of characters.
right. And also, some of my favorite movies in the franchise. Take that however you
Of course, there.
will. But
Okay,
to
so do
quote,
you like Monopoly? I'm just curious.
no, I've never been into it.
That is a game that when I start playing, I'm having a lot of fun. An hour in, I'm over it.
Yep, just stop.
I don't know why each game has to take like 12 hours to finish.
It is the mini golf of board games, where it starts fun and then nobody plays correctly to the end because you get fucking bored and you want it to be over.
Yeah.
Have you ever played mini golf with like a crowd? It's like a big group where you have to go one at a
No,
time. It is
that sounds
agonizing.
awful.
It is the worst.
I did play real golf once, and I almost passed out after the first hole. I
From
do not
boredom.
handle the heat well.
Oh boy. Yeah.
It was hot. Those damn golf clubs are heavy. It's like I'm
Mm.
done. Get me out of here. I'm gonna faint.
And
This is. I think this is a top tier kill in the franchise. What do you think?
yes. Oh yeah, this probably the best one of the movie. Yeah, we should talk about this. And the other one that's like a few seconds longer.
Well, and
Innocent
do you
conversion.
know about this? The machinery for this broke. So the
Yeah.
reason that blood spurts like that is you got Tom Savini or someone down there going,
Physically blowing into the tube, so the blood spurts weird and it's awesome. But yeah, we're talking about the Kevin Bacon death scene for context, and it's great.
Kevin
It looks,
Bacon.
and of course you can see the seams. Like if you're looking at it too closely, like his neck suddenly gets a lot longer and is miscolored and looks weird. Like it's not perfect, but it's still impressive for the time.
I think it's the second best. I still really like the Pamela Voorhees decapitation.
That's great. That's also a good one.
Although the best part of that is when you can tell that it's clearly a guy's hands after the decapitation.
Yep. People probably didn't notice that on VHS. And then in HD, you're like, wait a minute.
No,
But
but it's
yeah,
stuff like that that adds to the charm of the movie.
and to give credit to Savini and his work, for the time, this does have some of the most realistic fake blood
Mm-hmm.
you see on screen, especially compared to something like Dawn of the Dead, where it's orange and pink for some reason. Like this is good
On
looking
a
fake blood.
technical level, this is the kill I respect probably the most.
Oh, that's a great one.
Because it blew my
You know the
mind.
story. No.
Because yeah, so the because they needed a way to make this look real. So what Savini does is on the way up, it's a real axe. So that's why
Mhm.
they make sure to hit the light so that the audience in their brain's like, oh, it's a real axe, and then you just swap it out with a fake one on the way down. It's such a
Yeah.
in hindsight obvious but ingenious way to do that.
It's a seamlessly edited moment because, of course, she has the fake rubber axe just glued to her face, and all she's doing is just backing up in the wall. But when that comes immediately after the light getting hit with the real axe, it's a perfect edit. Uh,
And she's a crazy
Another
lady
Tom
talking to
Terry kill.
herself in the mirror.
Yeah, because we got to pad out the runtime.
Can you believe we're already 45 minutes in?
It goes by fast. Like, I'm with you that this movie definitely has its dull moments and drags. I don't find it relentlessly boring. I still find it watchable, in my opinion.
I can
I've
watch it.
seen
It's
more
just
boring slashers.
put, ask me to watch a Friday movie. I'm not gonna pick this one.
This is not your go-to, yeah. This is what you watch when you're doing a marathon,
Yeah,
if you're completionist.
marathoning them is also a very interesting experience because you can kind of see the franchise derail, but in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a zombie now, and he can do whatever the fuck we want him to.
Yeah, of course, as I mentioned earlier, I did not grow up with this franchise, but when I started watching these movies was because the game came out in
Mm.
2017 and looked really cool and everyone was playing it and it looked awesome and I was like, "Oh, I should finally watch those movies" because that just happened to be the time when I was starting to get into horror more, where I was watching more movies, whatever I could get my hands on, whatever was streaming. And I think on demand they had like the first 6 movies, so I
Were
watched through
you
all
like, dear
those.
God, what am I watching?
No, I had a good time. It also helped being in an era where, of course, you had like James Rolfe on Cinemassacre, reviewing all these movies. Like, there's also a time in YouTube where more people were talking about these and actually giving them proper attention. So you could seek out. Of course, Dead Meat got their start in 2017 with the game and the Kill Count series. So there was just all this stuff to consume and watch, and I
That is
remember
some
having fun.
great makeup.
The axe kill's so good. I remember telling my best friend Donnie, who's just as much, if not more, into horror than I am, who is now also a big fan of this franchise. But at the time when I was watching these, I do distinctly remember telling him about watching through these, and I was like, "Okay, so I've seen the first 6 Friday the 13th movies, which means I've seen half of them." And he was like, "Jesus Christ." And then I got really lucky because I hit that wall of like the New Line movies where it's like, oh fuck, do I rent these? Do I track down DVDs? How do I get and then much to my luck, shortly after that, the Blu-ray set comes out and I'm like,
Oh
fuck yeah, I'm getting
wow,
the Blu-ray set. So a couple of these movies I watched, some of the later ones I watched for the first time on this set. Because that's what,
crazy.
2018, 2019 when this thing
Yeah,
comes
somewhere
out.
around there.
So that was awesome. This is one of the creepiest
Yeah,
ideas of the movie that you could lean into with a reboot. The help me, like the boy voice that Pamela does, and like that's actually creepy. You could do more with that.
it's so funny though, just how different our experience was. Because I remember I cracked open my dad's copy of Jason X that I'd bought him for like Father's Day, and then I would go and track down just the DVD releases at the time at like half price books, trying to get them all.
Yep.
And I had like the whole set on that DVD that Noah has, except for the first one, which I had in a 2-pack with the second one on DVD. I was like, oh my
I
god,
do
it's the unrated cut.
I do remember what spoiled the Pamela twist for me because I did know that before watching the movie. It was some it was a review of the original Blu-ray set, not this one, the one that was in a steelbook or
Yeah,
something that came out years. That's
I
out of print
wanted that one
now.
so badly too.
I remember watching a review of that from the Flick Pick, I think, and he talked about the Pamela thing. I was like, oh, that was how I. For most people, it was Scream, who don't watch
I was
these
gonna say,
movies. That
I think it was Scream.
Yeah, that was how I found out. Like,
Now it's
oh,
just the
Jason's not even
like,
the
can we
killer.
stop? That is not. You're
Yes,
not clever anymore. Everybody
it
knows.
it's literally become the new. Did you know that Frankenstein was the name of the scientist and not the monster? Like that's what it is now.
Yeah.
It's like yes, everyone knows.
Meanwhile, we remembered this guy's in the movie.
He's at diner.
Yeah. That's Noah's favorite place to eat. I don't know if you knew
Uh, uh, one
that.
last
No,
thing I
because
want to say about.
I would cut it real quick just to follow up on that. Because I still get those like top 10 things you didn't know about, like Friday the 13th. And every
Hmm.
time, number one is Pamela Voorhees was the killer in Friday the 13th, not Jason. I'm like, you don't fucking say.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, no, the last thing I want to say about that strip monopoly scene, to quote my favorite cinema snob joke, is sorry, but playing a game for 3 hours just to see some boobs only to end up broke and in jail does not sound like my idea of a good time. Like Monopoly's a really fucked up weird game.
It always makes me laugh when people now are like, oh, kids are too reliant on technology. Yeah. In your day, we sat around and played a board game for 3 hours to get naked.
And another thing I should have mentioned earlier as like my early exposure to this franchise, like back when I'm a kid, is the TV show Psych, which I
Mm.
bring up all the time. That has a great Friday the 13th parody episode in season 3. I
Yeah,
don't know
I
if you
remember
remember that
that
one.
vaguely.
And there's a scene where the characters play like strip cribbage or something. And the one guy, of course, they don't show explicit nudity, but one guy is losing and he's completely naked except he still has his shoes on. It's great.
You know, something
And,
else that I think this movie has that we just kind of lost is there's sincerity to it.
mhm.
Yeah, nothing's happened for 30 minutes, but
A couple kills. That's
uh,
something.
the movie's not like, isn't it crazy that nothing's happened in 30 minutes?
It's not meta. Yeah. It's I don't want to call it efficient, but it's competent. We'll say that.
Yeah, no, that's just, you get in, you have a good time, you get out.
Right. And that is how I feel weird about we should talk about this, the whole uh Cunningham versus Victor Miller debacle controversy lawsuit over this movie because
So
for
stupid.
context, Cunningham comes up with the movie, hires Victor Miller to write it, and it was like a work for hire job. And then Cunningham, and then Victor Miller has nothing to do with the rest of the series, and Cunningham stays on as producer. And then many years later, Miller sues for ownership of the rights because he wrote the scripts. But and he won that lawsuit, by the way, which is surprising. But I could never really pick a side in that, just because Cunningham is kind
They're
of a
both
hack,
idiots.
but also Miller, A, the title, like this was not his idea, and B, it's not exactly a profound script. It's not even, it's not
If you don't,
Shakespeare we're seeing
if
on
you're not
screen.
being paid enough, sue him over that.
Right.
You are purposely stopping new entries in this franchise
That
over
was
a
the
50-year-old movie. Both of you are hacks. One of
yeah.
you came up with the movie title, the other just went and watched Halloween and took some notes.
Yeah. And that's what killed that game because that game was really popular and successful, and they had all this DLC planned that they just weren't allowed to release
There's
because of that
footage on
lawsuit.
YouTube of the Jason X DLC.
And it's really cool. I'm sad we never got it.
I will never
Uh,
forgive them for that.
and what's funny is we've now had multiple games trying to follow the success of that and still haven't hit on that level. Even if they're fun, even if they're enjoyable, like Evil Dead or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like we have yet to recapture the sensation of this game of that game, but boy, we've tried. You know, it was just
And I
so
think
novel and fun when it came
the
out.
problem with all of them, minus like Evil Dead, I don't know what the fuck happened there. Just I've never heard a reason they stopped support.
It
Um,
just wasn't a huge hit. I enjoyed it.
yeah, isn't because I've played all of them. They're all just okay. None of them, other than Evil Dead, feel like I'm in that franchise. Texas Chainsaw to a degree, but Texas Chainsaw is also so fucking complicated.
That's what I've heard is the main issue with it. But with Friday the 13th,
But
to its
I will
credit,
give it
it's
that
mostly
game.
just walking in. It's just walking in the
Yeah,
woods.
it's just
Just what
walking
the
in the
movies
woods.
are.
But I will give them credit is they did try something new. It's not just 1v like 6 or whatever. It's like
Mhm.
4v8 or whatever. Because they do actually have the family, which a lot of Texas Chainsaw stuff loses.
Which is true and really cool. But
That game's
yeah,
so
now
damn complicated. And I feel really bad because the reason Austin wouldn't play with me anymore is because I didn't teach him, but I was like, I don't know, I'm figuring it out. This game sucks at teaching you things. You need to get a
yeah.
PS5 so I can justify my purchase of that game.
I'll get to it. I'll get to it. But
And then
man, I
I
think
didn't care enough about Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I returned it
yeah.
because it was
uh,
whatever. There's so many other
yeah.
franchises you could have done that for. Why that one? That's not even a franchise. That's one obscure movie from the 80s.
The only one I'm waiting on that's of course never been officially announced, and we did just get the remaster of the old The Thing game, which is fun and cool. But only The Thing multiplayer game makes sense. If it was like
I think the only
Among
reason they're
Us,
holding them back is because of Among Us.
yeah, but if it was that, but with the violence and the combat of like the Evil Dead game, I think you'd have a really cool blend there, where
Yeah.
you start a
Where's
multiplayer
my
match and you don't
fucking
know who the
Hellraiser
thing
game?
is. Yeah,
Especially because Hellraiser is built on like the mind bending visuals. That's got to be much easier to do in a video game.
Pinhead was in Dead by Daylight.
Yeah, I played against him. They
I never
lost
did.
well, they've now delisted that DLC, but they lost all respect from me with that because they censored one of his voice lines because their player
Oh,
base are like 12. Because he had the line, "You opened the box, we came." People were abusing it, so apparently they muted it. But no, just imagine like a really cool Hellraiser game where you're like stuck in the box.
mhm. This scene's kind of cool. And again, it's something I'm surprised we never did again and tried to flesh out just her in the darkness and then just getting blinded by like these
No, this
floodlights
is
coming
where the
on.
movie kind of starts to come to life. Like we're getting a little
Yeah.
bit of a pulse here.
It kind of sucks that her death's off screen.
Yeah,
You're because you're like expecting her to get hit by the arrow and then we don't show it for some reason.
I wonder if that's missing footage.
Maybe. Gotta give Sleepaway Camp credit for that. That does have an on-screen arrow kill and it looks really good. And meanwhile, Alice is just hanging out again. And you probably mentioned this up top. Is this your first time looking at the 4K
I think I've watched this
copy?
one once, but this isn't. Yeah, this was a. I just want this on my shelf. Purchase that. I
Because the
must
steelbook
watch
looks
this.
so cool.
Yeah.
Brenda, that was her name. The one in the archery range.
Oh, and now you know which one Brenda is.
Hell yeah. Also, one thing you were talking about earlier with like the grit and the charm of this movie, that's also where the low budget helps is like we are shooting in a real summer camp in some real cabins. Like I'm sure there's a couple of sets, but that just adds to the authenticity.
Yeah. And these don't feel like movie characters. They just feel like watching people at a summer camp.
Right. And an example of a movie that I think does that better is the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where that is not a movie about character arcs or three-dimensional characters. Like they are just normal people. But that movie has so much more going on artistically and in terms of tension and shock value.
It is my favorite
And
proto slasher.
it's great. So
Except
while
for
I commend this
fucking
movie for that,
Franklin.
that also doesn't. Well, yeah, Franklin's just the worst, but in a believable way. Like we've all known a Franklin. And I hope you like scenes of characters shouting other characters' names and looking for them in the woods, because this
Okay,
series will go back to that trope a lot.
okay. So this is just completely off base and everything. Um, but you remember that scene in Stranger Things? I think season three, where Max and Eleven are wearing the raincoats, and one is red and one is yellow. You think that's a reference?
I wouldn't put it past them.
Because one of them is wearing red and one of them is wearing a yellow raincoat.
If that's a reference, like that's actually a deep cut
Yeah.
reference. I respect that. That is a show not known for being subtle in terms of what it's referencing. And for as clunky and amateurish as this movie is, this is one of the more impressive shots of this movie. It's a long take. We're outside looking through these characters through a window. We pan up, pan to the side. We see the phone line's been cut. It's just one long take. Like it's actually good visual storytelling, which is not something Cunningham's generally known for. So good job, Cunningham. You directed that shot well.
Okay, so I can't find anything that's directly confirming this, but I'm pretty sure that you and I are probably the only ones that would have noticed. What?
Sorry, what?
Said I can't find anything directly confirming this,
Oh,
but
okay. In terms of
I
the
doubt
raincoat.
anybody would have noticed.
I choose to believe it's a reference.
I also choose to.
And then if you ask the Duffer Brothers, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, totally. Yep, that's what you're going for. Sure."
Okay, so I did find one article from IndieWire, but they just list every movie that's ever had raincoats. They're like raincoats from It, Don't Look Now to Friday the 13th and Milo. Bright raincoats have long been bold splash of color to offset the darkness of horror projects. Thanks. I've also
True.
seen movies.
That's usually the purpose of a raincoat. Nailed it.
Ah, Jesus.
Now, one of these movies we have done a commentary on before, Friday 2, which we both prefer over this one. It's a
Everyone.
much better directed movie. Yeah. Uh, 2 is a much better directed movie and is a much better final girl. I agree with all that. Even though I would rank that higher than this one, there are still those qualities. There are still a few qualities that this has over 2. Like, it's cool that we get a cameo with Pamela in 2, but you obviously get a lot more of her in this one. That's the thing that stands out about this movie is Betsy Palmer's scenes at the end are great. So it has that, and this one also has the Savini kills. The kills in 2 are a big step down. They're saved by a couple. There are a couple standout ones, but in terms of gore,
Dude does have
that
the
does.
funniest kill.
Yeah, the wheelchair
That
one,
poor wheelchair guy.
who will show up in many a recap in the sequels. That's one they always come back to.
My favorite is I think the recap of four, where it's the people from two just recapping things they can't possibly know because they're dead.
It's fine. It's about the
This is
flow
a
of the
great
scene.
shot.
This shot's cool, except when this guy gets off screen to death. Like, oh, that was lame.
And that continues up to four?
Mm-hmm. Well,
Because four
and
does
but
that with the
then
mom.
it happens a lot in 7 and 8 because that's when Paramount really cracks down on censoring these movies and making them cut out all the gore. A lot of people get off screen to death in those movies.
I knew in 7 they do. Does it happen in 8? I'm gonna
Not
watch
as
8 in
much
a
as
minute.
not as much as 7. Also, when they went into 8 making it, they knew, okay, let's just not make this as gory. Let's not bother because we know Paramount's gonna cut it all out anyway. And then they still had to cut gore down. It's like that's practically a PG-13 movie. Come on, Paramount.
Which is funny because then immediately you get to New Line and the ratings board just didn't care anymore.
Yep. Yeah, I mean the MPAA is still awful and inconsistent and annoying. And at least we get away with so much more in R-rated movies now than we could in the 80s. That's nice. But even so, you still have your Terrifiers and now your Toxic Avenger remake. Like we are still getting those movies released unrated because fuck the MPAA. And you know what? They're doing well. I'm fine with this trend. And of course, probably the most infamous examples of that in the 80s were Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, released unrated and good. I'm glad that those aren't compromised movies. And were hits, cult classics. And meanwhile, during the nap scene,
All right, I took a nap.
it's funny too because I know a lot of kids back in the day grew up watching these movies on TV, edited out, like with Joe Bob Briggs presenting. That's how a lot of kids first watch these, which is fun and cool, but also like if you're gonna watch these movies, that's not the way to watch them. Cut
That's just
down.
you have that experience.
Right.
Then as an
And
adult, you can go back and watch the real versions and decide if you like it
right. But then also when you go back to like this movie, you don't have to cut out a whole lot to make that TV friendly.
or not.
Like this really isn't far off from what today would be a PG-13. There's just too much blood. That's the
I
thing
will
the
say I
MPA is
do.
still weird about.
I never watched the Joe Big Briggs, but I do have fond memories of when I had cable around Halloween season, just turning on AMC or Sci-Fi, whoever
Yeah,
did those, and just let it play. Like it just washed over me.
those were the days.
Mostly that was the only way I could get people to leave me alone because nobody else wanted to watch them. You know what those bastards
I
never
remember.
played? Jason X.
Oh, put that on the Sci-Fi channel. It'd be perfect.
I'm pretty sure it was AMC because they do those every year. Those like Fright Fest or whatever.
And the Chucky movies. Like I didn't watch them
Yeah,
on TV, but I know they had a bunch of Chucky
I
movies.
maintain that first Child's Play movie is actually scary. Uh, that little bastard jumps out of everywhere.
See,
That and I think
I
that's the
know.
only one where you get they mix in the dolls with like children or small people,
Yeah, they
and
also
there's
have little
really
people.
disconcerting scenes where you can tell it's not a doll, and that somehow makes it scarier.
Yeah, they did everything. Um, so earlier you said the movie was picking up. I agreed. That doesn't mean it doesn't continue to have low moments. Like
We
here,
we
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 see
had a
Ellis making
pulser.
comic coffee.
The pulse is getting lower, but it's still there. It's
He's making that coffee. Hope it's good.
that's instant coffee. I can tell you right now, it is not. I don't know if you're a coffee drinker.
What are you
Instant
gonna do?
coffee is revolting.
I am not a coffee drinker, but I will take your word for
Instant coffee is like microwaving, like a microwaved meal, but like the dollar store version. Like it's drinkable, but you're gonna hate yourself.
So like boxed wine. Like
Sure. Or what's another? Or like hot chocolate with water instead of milk.
well, according to a mutual friend of ours, that's the correct
He's
way.
wrong.
Still working on it. Can we play the Rocky music over this? Add some more
This thing does
energy.
need some like music or something. Like, oh,
Or
there's a new movie out on Hulu that I want to watch. It's a musical,
oh
but it stars Sadie Sink.
oh cool. I didn't know that.
I
Do
keep
you know
seeing
what
ads for it
it
on
is?
TikTok.
I haven't
Uh,
heard of this at all.
I can find it. Hold on. I'd never heard of it, but apparently it's they're really paying for that TikTok advertising because I can't get away from it now. Odessa is a 2025 American post-apocalyptic musical drama film.
Ooh.
And okay, here's the weirdest part. The other actress that I know from this is Regina Hall. Do you know who that is?
I know the name, but I can't place
She
the
is the
face.
annoying sidekick in the first two scary movies.
Oh, okay, okay. That lady.
She's in
Sure.
that for
Why not?
some reason.
And oh my god, the movie just came back to life. Because
Yeah.
now Alice is screaming.
I love this bit of music right here. That wow, wow, wow.
Music here is great.
Yeah, look at that poster. That poster's cool.
Okay, I'm
I'm
intrigued.
I'm curious. I've
I'm
never heard
glad.
Sadie Sink sing.
Yeah, it's a Hulu picture.
It is. They put out some decent flicks every once in a while.
Hmm? Now, here's a long scene that I actually think does work. That this is a long take of Alice like trying to barricade this door, and it's good tension. It feels very raw and improvisational, but in a good way because this character's panicking and
So something this movie does have in common with Friday the 13th, or with Halloween, sorry. And this is another scene where you can tell, oh, they're just looking at Friday. Is both of these final girls are incompetent because they just kind of wait for the killer to get back up and keep chasing them again.
that does happen in both. I'd still argue this is a female character who has more agency than you usually saw in dramas or action movies in this era.
No, I agree.
Which is common for horror in general. That's why the final girl trope is so
Yeah,
celebrated. It's like back in the day, these were our strong female characters, even though critics hated these movies.
which is why I can't take anybody seriously when they're just like, oh, movies from back then hated women.
Yeah,
Did you watch it? The woman is the only
exactly.
competent character. But no, she does have a few moments where I'm like, why are you just standing there? Keep going.
Hmm. And of course, you don't know how you'd actually act in this
No.
situation
So
if you would go all the way and kill the killer, but
I
I'd at least
because
keep
I have a
running.
lot of friends that'll do that, like, I'd never do this. So it's like, you have absolutely no idea how you would react in this situation. You are
Right.
reacting by observing. Because I hate those memes where it's like, oh, only a movie character would do this. It's like, oh, okay.
It's about balance, but I've always said you should be allowed to let your movie characters make mistakes or even do stupid things because that's what humans do.
She's like, where's that instant
Your
coffee?
protagonist should be perfect. Yeah. And in a minute, we're gonna see Tom Savini jump through this window. Did you know about that?
Oh God, no, I didn't.
It's the only scene I can think of where we have a quote unquote stunt double for Brenda. And I don't know, just about you tell me if you can tell if this is Savini. Just pay attention.
Yeah, that clearly was a different body type. That's fine.
That's
That
like
was a
the
fine
one
stunt.
stunt in this movie. That's fine. It's tradition though. It's our first Friday the 13th somebody getting chucked through a window scene, which we do 20 times in part 4.
Yeah.
If you like broken glass, boy, is this the franchise for you. But yeah, this everyone can agree is the best part of the movie. This whole chase scene with Alice, especially when Betsy Palmer pops up on screen. This scene's great. Who are you? Asks the audience.
Well, crazy thing, we've had three Mrs. Voorhees, if you count just people that actually played her, not shrunken heads or
Yeah, with Freddy versus Jason in the remake, and probably in the new show. We'll see.
yeah.
Because we
Who was it
know
that they cast?
Linda
They,
Cardellini.
yeah, I really hope that's who she's playing. That would be
Right,
awesome.
because that I was about to ask you that. I don't think it was confirmed she's playing Pamela. I think
No,
some
just that
people
she's
just
in it.
assumed. Okay, yeah, I would love that casting though.
I like the one in the remake, or in not in the remake. It's the remake. In the remake, she's a glorified cameo. I like the one in Freddy versus Jason just because it's kind of funny how like awful she is. Because it's
And
just
she's also
because it's
way
not
older than this version.
because it's also. But I can wave all that away though, which is the weird part because it's all Freddy, and like that's just Freddy's recreation of her, and I
I
don't
mean,
trust
to be
Jason to know the difference.
right, he did mistake Ginny in part 2 for his mom,
Yeah.
so he's not the brightest bulb in the shed. We can't trust his memory, so that's actually fine. Did you know a young boy drowned? And to this movie's credit, it is cool that we give her a backstory. Um, a lot
This
of
is
lore.
this is a great monologue.
Six. It's a good monologue. Yeah, his name was Jason, and today is his
Yes.
birthday.
Einstein Kills uses that in the breakdown for their Friday song, and it's so good.
Is that the Jason Mom one, or did they do another song?
No, so they have a song just called "Thank God It's Friday," that is like a heavy metal song based on this.
Nice. I love Jason's Mom.
Yeah, it's
Has
so
got it
good.
going on. That song's great. Also, I don't remember if this was Betsy Palmer's idea or if this was something they almost explored in a sequel that never happened, but there was this backstory idea for Pamela because, of course, we never meet Jason's father in the series. That's almost happened a couple times, but that's never actually happened in one of these movies. But somebody's idea was like that, well, she probably had Jason when she was really young and it was out of wedlock. And her father's out of, or his father's out of the picture, and she raised him as a single mother, which obviously in the 40s or 50s would have been a lot more scandalous than it would be today. And part of her hatred for these kids is, projecting, because of the how ostracized she was for that quote unquote sin, and it just adds more layers to the subject matter and the kills where it's like, no, this is like an interesting character you could do a lot more with. Like there's some substance here. There are things you can expand on that I think are interesting.
No, because this thing that we've lost in slashers is the commentary on parents and family and
Hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if X was inspired by this movie because it's obviously
yeah,
inspired by slashers, but there's a little bit of Mrs. Voorhees, I think, in Pearl in that movie. I think there's some parallels you could find.
yeah. Like obviously, it's also looking at Texas, but
Yeah.
I think Ty West likes this movie.
For sure, for sure. And
And it
it's
is
two Betsy Palmer's.
astounding that Betsy Palmer did this movie, hated it, but still gave this such a good performance.
She doesn't phone it in. This paid for a new car.
Yeah. And
Good for her.
God bless her. I don't know if you've watched that like 6 hour documentary.
I've never watched the whole thing. I've seen
But
clips.
she's in that, I think. That or another one that I saw where like she didn't think of any of this for a long time. And then she started going to cons and like people like wanted to talk to her and she just embraced it. Like she didn't
Yep.
have that attitude where I'm like too good for this. It's like, oh, people liked this. Like,
He is that rare breed where she was always very blunt, very honest about her opinions, but was always cool with the fans. Like completely embraced the fans and the success of these movies and never shit on that. But of course, in like Freddy versus Jason, they did ask her to come back, and she said, "No, that script sucks. I don't need to do that." And like, so I respect the honesty, but also like she's not ashamed of her part in this franchise. You
yeah,
know, like that is really cool. And this is now like the thing she's remembered for. But that's fine. It's cool to be remembered for something. Most actors don't get that luxury. You know, for some actors it sucks. It's like, oh, really? That's the thing I get remembered for. But it just sometimes it just depends on how you look at it. And like we said, she doesn't phone it in. She does give a really good performance here. Okay, shoot her, Alice. Shoot her.
that's what I'm saying. It's
Take the
like,
shot.
no,
Take the shot. And you waited too long. It's not the actress's fault. It's just that issue of, okay, we have like a 15-minute chase
yeah,
scene here. It has to keep going. It would be anticlimactic if she just shot her and like, oh, that's over. It may have been better if she just pulled the trigger and like, oh fuck, the gun wasn't loaded. I forgot to load the gun. Something. I don't know. And I mentioned stunt doubles earlier. This is them doing their own stunts. Betsy Palmer and Adrian King are really beating the shit out of each other. Betsy Palmer even hit her for real, like when she's smacking her, and she's
that's
like, "Hey,
amazing.
they're our actors." Yeah, she's like, "No, like we're theater actors. It's what you do. You do it for real. Fuck you."
But no, just go try to find her bits of that documentary. Bless her heart. She looks back on
Mm.
this fondly now, or did at
It's
the time.
really cool that she lived to be a part of all that stuff and got to talk about it. And that's what sucks about that show is Adrian King was gonna be in that, and I don't know if that's still gonna be the case. Now that
Yeah, I
they're
don't
starting from
know.
scratch, like that kind of blows. I was looking forward to that.
Makes me wonder if she would have been Pamela Voorhees.
Probably,
If that's
which
the
would have been
case,
interesting.
maybe it's better she's not.
But
I'm not
Linda
convinced
Cardellini
she
would be
can
a
pull
cool
it off.
choice. I don't know. Yeah,
Like, maybe it's not fair to judge her on this movie, but she's not the world's greatest actress.
right. Like I said, she's fine in this, and I do think she got screwed on the second one a little bit because she agreed to come back, but then was surprised when they were like, "Oh yeah, we don't really have a script. We just kind of need you to improv, and then you're gonna die." Like, so that's unfortunate, but it's nice that we see her at least for a little bit in the second one, I guess.
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, that's a dead body. Get it together, Alice. Fine. It also doesn't help when in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise we will later get another final girl named Alice, who is arguably better and more remembered than this Alice.
Okay, hold
Oh,
on. Hold on. Which one is Alice? Is that 4 and 5?
yes, that is Alice. She's a
I
fan
mean,
favorite. No, I like it. I
she's in
mean,
the two
those movies
movies
are
that I
great.
can't remember which is which.
That's part of why, because they have the same final girl. I mean, I do like Patricia Arquette a lot in 3, but then she's replaced with Tuesday Night in 4, and then is killed early. So like that character doesn't amount to much.
You say that to all the
But
part three people that came back.
yep, that's my big frustration with Part 4.
Well, at least
This
Robert Englund was still good.
That's true. This franchise I'm conflicted because part of the charm of it is we almost always get a new final girl. We're always moving it forward, but there are a bunch we almost like Alice at one point may have been the main character too, but instead she's killed in the opening. And Ginny in 2 we almost bring back in 3, and that one I'm a little sad didn't happen. I
That one I'm
wonder
upset.
how
I think three would instantly be better if you had Ginny or anyone but whatever her name is.
the do you know what the original plan for 3 was?
No.
It was gonna be Ginny in a mental institution, and then Jason tracking her down there and
Be
trying to
cool.
kill her, which we do in many a slasher, but that probably would have been better than what we got.
I mean, anything would have. Three has the worst final girl.
It does, and again, I think she's fine. Like I don't blame the actress, but yeah, she's not my favorite. The worst final girl, who is not the worst actress in that movie. That's that other
No.
lady. And this fight's still going, but it's fun.
Uh, but at least the girl with the worst acting has a memorable scene. Like, I remember that scene. They're all
Yep.
dead. Oh God, Tony's dead. I don't remember what name she says.
It's so good. No, she says Shelly's dead.
Shelly's dead. While she runs down the weirdest staircase.
I don't know if I love how much I hate her or if I hate how much I love her. It's one of those two. She is a standout.
She's dollar store Cheech and Chong. You can't tell me that's not what those two were going for.
Oh, and that's the one when we were like, okay, what is this friend group? How do these people know each other? Why are they hanging out? Like, this
They
does not fit.
This was an excellently well cast group of people that somehow know each other.
Alice, run. This fight's really fun though. Like when she picks up the oar and she cuts it in half with a machete. Like there's some good
Yeah,
choreography here. And
it's
again,
just
it adds.
it's Teddy. I love how much I hate loving her. Who?
Yeah, exactly.
Hello, Teddy.
It's good. No, we're talking about the Pamela Alice fight, which again has no stunt doubles. It's just these actresses beating the shit out of each other, which adds to the authenticity.
Yeah,
It's
that's
great.
what's great about this. It's about
There's a
family.
really good. And that's what's so powerful about it. She's like shoving her head in the
I
dirt.
love that.
What a dick
No, there's
move.
like a grit to this fight. It's not like, oh, this is a really choreographed fight, which is cool, by the way. Uh,
Hmm. And oh my god, the slow mo.
I love that awkward slow mo shot where she's like, and there's Tom Savini's hands.
And artistically, points for Cunningham. It parallels the opening of the movie with the choppy slow mo freeze frame, girl screaming, cut to
Yeah.
final card. See, set up
Oh
or
God, you
payoff.
really shouldn't have focused on the hand so much.
Nope. Also, if you look too closely at the neck, you can see like the toothpicks in there that were holding the fake head
Fine.
in place. Now, I've never been in this situation. I don't know if my instinct would be to get in a
I
canoe
absolutely would not take the boat out in the middle of the lake.
in a lake, not even a river, a lake.
Yeah.
Maybe she's trying
But
to get to New York. I
is
don't know.
this the best jump scare in like cinematic history? I think it might be.
It's one of my favorites and will be copied many a time in this franchise and never as good.
I do kind of love the part three one just because how stupid it is.
It's the worst one.
I don't understand what's happening.
I also love the music here. It's so different from the rest of the movie, and it's shot well too. Like this is very pretty.
No, this
Um,
isn't a oh everything's going silent. You can tell a jump scare's coming. No, it's just
right? Yes,
it's over. There's a happy ending.
we
Just
see the
fucking kidding.
policeman. This is one of the
And it's
best
funny
shock endings
because
ever.
the Thank God It's Friday song, which I'll send to you after we finish, emulates this because the song kind of tapers off into a piano piece and then it jump scares you into the next scream section. It's awesome.
Yeah, like I am I watching Twin Peaks? What is this music? I don't know, but it's awesome.
Yeah. And that's a like gorgeous shot.
No, it's some of the best photography in the movie.
Sean S.
And
Cunningham
a
was like,
little
yes, nature will do my job for me.
and of course this ending comes later. This is not in the script.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best parts of the movie. And Zombie Jason looks great. Little kid Zombie Jason. No,
Yeah.
this is a perfectly executed jump scare. Oh my god.
And I can just imagine just scaring the shit out of people in the theater.
Okay, my actual well, okay, my second biggest complaint with this movie. The snake thing still sucks and pisses me off. We talked about it earlier. Uh aside from the clunky pacing and whatever, my other big complaint with this movie is I wish the movie just stopped there.
I was just
I
about to
don't need that
say,
to be a
I've
dream.
never had this before on a watch through. I kind of wish you just ended it there.
It's so scary and shocking. And fuck man, that's great. And then just kidding, it was a dream. And it all the more just rubs salt in the wound when Alice is just killed in the opening of the next one anyway. Like you could. I'm usually very sensitive about killing final girls in sequels and how we handle that. It's something I have very mixed feelings on depending on the movie. The Nightmare on Elm Street, the original, we've talked about before. Great movie. Ending is weird and doesn't work.
Both of these
Totally
movies.
not a great ending. Yeah, this movie though totally earns it. And just zombie Jason pulling her under the water. And the criticism I've heard is like, well, but the series wasn't supernatural yet. Like that's a cheat. You can't do that. Who cares? That's what makes it shocking. It's a campfire story. You know, it's a story to scare teenagers. Like the zombie Jason works because you don't see it coming. It's awesome, and I wish the movie ended there.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't telegraph there's a fucking jump scare coming like most modern ones do.
Yep.
Like I remember going to see the first It in theaters, which is a great film, but at a certain point, it's just like, oh, yeah, there's a jump scare coming. Come on,
There's a jump scare. Yep. 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 Yep.
but very, very scary.
Also,
Much screamed.
also, this line is great. Then he's still there. Spoiler alert: no, he's not. He got out at some point. I don't know when, but come back for movie 2. Don't worry, we already did a
12.
commentary on it. You can go watch that. And then they never made another one again. Complete story. Wake up, John. We got another movie to watch.
We do. Well, folks, that was Friday the 13th. A very cool horror picture. If you're watching
Yeah.
after the fact, we do appreciate it. Be sure to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. We'll talk to you guys next time.